So, with the launch of Season 1 here in Modern Warfare, we officially have our very first DLC weapons for the year with the Ram 7 Assault Rifle and the Holger-26 Light Machine Gun, each of which can be earned for free just by playing the game and leveling up the Battle Pass. And of course, with some new weapons comes the ability to make some pretty cool variants of each, including the fan favorite G36C, which just so happens to be available through the base weapon of the Holger-26. So today we're looking at how you can make the G36C via the gunsmith. But before we jump into that, if you guys are new here, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome to the channel. Each and every day we are covering the latest Call of Duty news and intel, so feel free to subscribe with your notifications turned on if you do want to stay up to date with all of that. And of course, if you enjoy the video, let me know by dropping a like rating on it, as it would be much appreciated. And now let's get into the G36C variant guide here in Modern Warfare. So, as I mentioned, you can make the G36C from the Holger-26 DLC weapon, meaning you will have to rank up your battle pass up to tier 15 in order to actually unlock it. And you can do that simply by putting in the time to manually rank up the pass, or you can automatically unlock the weapon when you buy the battle pass bundle, as you get the first 20 tiers unlocked automatically with that. Either way though, the Holger-26 is where this secret weapon variant starts. Now, by nature, the Holger-26 is a light machine gun, so you will need to end up changing quite a bit of it to transform it into the G36C. And the first thing you'll want to end up doing to start this conversion is unlock the FTAC or the FTAC 8.98-inch Spitfire barrel, as this is going to give the weapon a more G36C-like look right off the bat. This Spitfire barrel ends up increasing the aim down sight speed and also the overall movement speed. However, it does end up decreasing the bullet velocity and the overall recoil control, so just be aware of that. But as you will notice as we get through these attachments today, and ultimately when we get into the weapon review and comparison towards the end of the video, this setup really focuses a lot on upping the mobility and the speed of the weapon to take away from its LMG properties, so this barrel is definitely mandatory in that sense. Then, the next attachment you'll want to be using for this conversion kit is going to be the integral reflex sight, as this is very similar to the sight that we've seen used on the G36C in the past. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this definitely is not my favorite optic attachment in the whole game for this weapon. I don't think it is necessarily the most convenient. I honestly would much rather be using the GI mini reflex or even the Solo Zero mini reflex. But for straight up accuracy with this conversion, this sight is the one you'll want to be using to really bring out the true G36C from previous games. Attachment number 3 is going to end up being the Fss Infantry Stock, as this is once again going to help the Holger look more like the G36, and it's also going to help speed up the mobility as well, as it increases the aim walking movement speed, aka your strafing speed while ADS'd. But it is going to decrease your aiming stability as well, so you will notice some more sway when aiming down sights, particularly in those longer range engagements. After that, we're going to be using the 30-round mags ammunition attachment, which is really one of the most important attachments in this entire setup, as it really takes this weapon from being an LMG with a massive magazine that really slows down the weapon in general, and it turns it into something much more agile and speedy. These magazines end up increasing the aim down sight speed and the overall movement speed, but obviously you lose a ton of magazine ammo capacity, which we'll touch on a bit later on into the video. Then, finally for the attachments on this conversion kit, I also like to use the stippled grip tape to once again help with that mobility, as this grip ends up increasing the aim down sight speed and also the sprint to fire speed, which per usual is going to help a ton with any kind of setup, and even more so here when we are focusing a lot on improving the overall mobility of the weapon. So with that, we've got our 5 attachments on the Holger-26, and as you can see, the look and performance of this weapon changes pretty drastically. Out of these attachments, you'll really need the FTAC Spitfire barrel, the integral reflex, the Fss Infantry Stock, and also the 30-round mags to make the full-on G36C, and then that stippled grip tape is really just my preferred choice for that 5th attachment, so just take that as you will. Anyways, with all of these specific attachments on there, you can see that really only the mobility of the gun ends up increasing, whereas the range and the control both decrease. So comparatively with these conversion kits, we normally have quite a few stat adjustments, but this one is relatively minor. However, that doesn't take away from how much the Holger actually changes when transformed into the G36C. Right away you'll notice that when you run around, you feel so much less bogged down thanks to that mobility boost. And with this conversion, you feel like 10 times as agile and I guess just a lot more aggressive as is. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but when I use LMGs and even when I was leveling up the Holger to actually get these attachments, which by the way, you don't need to be max weapon rank for this setup. I believe by weapon level 40, you have pretty much everything you need to build it. But anyways, with LMGs, I just feel like playing aggressive is just kind of awkward since you always feel so heavy when moving around. But the G36C is an entirely different approach to this weapon, as you can definitely run around and find a lot of success while doing so. In fact, I would actually encourage running around with this setup, because in long distance fights, this weapon is not entirely all that efficient. Compared to the other light machine guns and also the other weapons that use the 5.56 rounds like the G36C does, the Holger or the G36 does feel a bit weaker in those medium to long range fights. And so utilizing this weapon in those CQC engagements is going to be your best bet for winning the most amount of gunfights, obviously pending what weapons exactly the enemies are using. You know, I've gotten plenty of kills at long range because I either outgun the enemy or they're just not aware of what's going on, it seems. But against things like some snipers, other LMGs like the PKM, and even some assault rifles like the Odin or the M4, it can be a little tough to win some of those fights just due to the recoil and the damage output coinciding with one another. Speaking of the recoil, as I mentioned earlier, the Fss Integral Reflex is certainly not the most optimal optic to use in my opinion, as I don't really find it being all that helpful in anything past medium range for staying on target. Now, another huge drawback of this setup is going to end up being that 30-round magazine. In all honesty, I feel like the magazine size is the biggest hindrance of this conversion, because as I mentioned, the damage output is not all that great, and with only 30 rounds in a mag, you find yourself reloading a lot, and that reload animation is very slow, and oftentimes even using a reload cancel doesn't end up working all that well. Compared to the stock magazine, which has plenty of ammo, I found myself dying a lot because I had to stop and reload, or I would simply run out of ammo and there'd be way too many enemies looking at me to stand any kind of chance of reloading, healing up, and somehow getting back into action, all without being taken out. But despite the many drawbacks that this setup might have, I honestly do think it is one of my favorite secret weapon variants that we've built so far because it can be really good. The gameplay you guys saw on, I believe, Karst River Quarry, for instance, was my first match of the day, and I found myself doing really well just by playing those close and medium range fights, whereas some of the other gameplays required some more long distance engagements, so I admittedly struggled a bit more there. However, when you use this weapon, if you are able to capitalize on its efficiency in close quarters combat, you can definitely find yourself winning a lot of gunfights with ease. I would probably say as an assault rifle, which is what this conversion kit ends up being, the G36C stands right in the very middle of the pack. I think it is a bit easier to use than the FAL and even the Odin in some cases, so the skill gap is not nearly as large with it compared to those. However, the M4 and the Kilo are still more optimal choices at the end of the day, and I'd say the G36C is really the most similar to that of the M13 between its damage output and mobility. So, all things considered, the G36C is most certainly a viable choice of weaponry at the end of the day. My final ranking, which I think I might start doing for all future conversion kits, almost kind of like how Doug gives his Doug scores, is a 6 out of 10 for accuracy. The recoil can be a bit tough to combat in those long distance fights, but up close it is very containable. A 6 out of 10 for damage, as it's not the weakest but not the strongest assault rifle. A 4 out of 10 for range, a 5 out of 10 for fire rate, an 8 out of 10 for mobility considering its weapon class, and a 5 out of 10 for control, once again going back to its long range struggles. So in the end, we've got a score of 34 out of 60, which I would equate to the weapon being just decent overall, with its best features being highlighted by close range combats. Anyways, with all of that being said, that is effectively how you can make the G36C here in Modern Warfare, and that is going to wrap things up for today. If you guys enjoyed the video, let me know, drop a like rating on it as it would be much appreciated. And of course, if you are new here and you want to stay up to date with everything going on in the world of Call of Duty, including all the latest news and intel, updates and leaks, and pretty much everything else in between, feel free to subscribe with your notifications turned on. That way you'll always know when I post a new video. As always, if you would like to check out any of my partners, be sure to use code IMMORTAL on all Scuff, G Fuel, Control Freak, and Respawn products. And also, if you do want to check out the merch, that's also live now, and you can find all of those links listed down in the description below. Once again, thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.